Your prospect is no different. They are no different than you. They're seeing a lot of ads, but the only difference is it's your ad that they're not interacting with. Hey, I'm Silvio Perez. I'm the head of ad operations here at Metadata, and I'm so excited to talk to you all today about how to get to revenue faster with experimentation. Now, I have a lot of content to cover throughout this presentation, so should you have any questions that come up, please feel free to drop them in the chat box down below, and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. Now, we're talking about how to get to revenue faster with experimentation, so I think it's really important to just take a step back and talk about, what does experimentation actually look like? Now, experimentation is not this. As much as I would love for it to be this, and I think all of us, it's not. It is not exponential. It's not linear. Month over month, volume is increasing. Month over month, cost is decreasing. This is far from the truth. What it actually is it's messy. It's emotionally exhausting. There's ups and there's downs. And here's a real example that I pulled from a client's LinkedIn ads account. And this line graph here represents cost per lead. And you can see here on the bottom, first week, month out of the gate, cost per lead is sky high. This is when the VP of marketing is screaming, turn this off. This is too expensive. But if you stick through it and you're learning and you have a process in place, you iterate, you adjust based on what the data is telling you, and then eventually you start to find some success. And then lo and behold, because this is not a perfect process, God forbid, you selected audience expansion or something like that, cost goes way high up again, and then you learn, you adjust, and then eventually you find that sweet spot that we're all trying to go for, where the unit economics allow you to scale profitably. Now, in order for you to get here, you have to go through all these ups and downs. And unfortunately, the key thing I want to stress here is to not let your emotions get in the way. Unfortunately, way too many people, they pause things way too soon, and they pull a plug before they're able to really reap the benefits and the rewards that they're seeking, whether that's unlocking a new channel, trying a new campaign strategy, whatever the case might be. You don't want to let your emotions get in the way. The key thing is that you have a process in place with safeguards, and we're going to get into this to allow you to experiment confidently. Now, we're talking about how to get to revenue faster. I really want to triple click on this word here, faster, and talk about how long is it going to take for you to really find success. This is going to be dictated based on two key things. Number one is your daily budget, and number two is your time to pipeline. So your daily budget is very, very important because essentially we need data. And in order for you to get a large enough sample size to be able to make informed decisions based on data, you need to spend money. So if you're spending $10 a day and your average cost per click on LinkedIn, for example, is $10, you're going to get one click a day. It's going to take you forever to get a large enough sample size. Versus if you are spending $100 a day, you can essentially get 10 times the amount of data, which is going to allow you to learn and iterate a lot quicker than if you were spending less. The second key thing to keep in mind is your time to pipeline. So this whole presentation is about how to get to revenue faster. If we want revenue, we need pipeline. So however long it takes you to get opportunities to be created based on the channel that you're experimenting on is going to dictate, how long it's going to take for you to find that success, from when somebody actually sees your ad, they convert, MQL, opportunity, that whole timeline. Now, in order to help navigate the chaos of the ups and the downs and, very emotionally straining and to avoid turning things off too soon, we're going to talk about 4 key areas throughout this presentation. Number 1 is philosophy. Let's talk about a simple testing philosophy that can help you focus and conceptualize this entire process. Number 2 is we're going to talk about setup. We're going to talk about best practices to keep in mind when setting up your experimentation so you can really find those optimal results. Number 3, super important, we're going to talk about safeguards, how to leverage automated safeguards to remove human error and eliminate overspending. I really want to emphasize the word there, automated, because unfortunately too many people are overspending. They're letting things run way, way, way too long, which completely can be avoided with really simple solutions in most ad channels. And then last but not least, number 4 is I want to talk about scale. In the startup world, we love scale. We love growth. How can we take things to the next level and confidently ramp our experiments that are working well? Now, I want to quickly preface this by saying this testing philosophy, this process can be applied to all different kinds of channels, whether it's Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, Quora ads, Reddit ads, Twitter ads, you name it. This can be applied to those different channels. So just something to keep in mind. Now let's go ahead and quickly talk about philosophy. Now, a very simple philosophy I recommend that you use across the channels that you're experimenting on is the 3 A's. And the 3 A's stands for audiences, ads, and assets. And this represents the order of focus within your experimentation. So number 1 is to test audiences first. We first want to figure out which audiences are converting and driving the highest quality leads. We want to make sure, essentially, our ads are getting in front of the right person, because if we're not, then, everything else is going to be a lot harder. Now, if you're not optimizing towards leads for whatever reason, maybe you're experimenting for content consumption, maybe you're trying to do more demand generation, promoting ungated content, for an example, then for you, essentially, instead of high quality leads, you want to make sure your ads are getting in front of the right people. So maybe you measure that based on engagement of the ad, the titles of the individuals that are liking your ad or commenting on your ad. Or if you're running LinkedIn ads, for example, you're looking at the companies that you're getting impressions from. Are they representing your account list or the types of companies you want to get in front of? If you're driving people to your website, are you using like an identity resolution tool like Kickfire to be able to decipher the IP addresses of those companies that went to your website? So again, to verify that your ads are getting in front of the right people. The second piece is to test ads second. I think of ads into 3 components that actually create your ad. So that's the creative, the messaging, and the type. Type being the format. Is it carousel? Is it single image? Is it video? If we're talking about Google ads here, is it expanded text ads? Is it responsive search ads? Is it dynamic search ads? The ad type itself. Now, once we've identified those winning audiences, we know our ads are getting in front of the right person. We have verified this. Then we can check that box essentially and begin to test iterations of our ads to find a combination that can scale profitably. And then last but not least, we want to test assets last. Now that we understand what creative concepts and messaging resonate best with our audience, we can begin to add more offers to the mix. So this is a very simple 3-step testing philosophy that you can apply across channels to allow you to understand where your area of focus needs to be along this, crazy up and down of experimentation. Now, why focus on audiences first? I really want to drive each point home here. We focus on the audiences first because if our ads are not targeting the right people or accounts, everything else is pointless. And once you have validated that you're getting in front of a good audience, so on Facebook and LinkedIn, it can be an actual audience, whether that's based on like titles or seniority or a specific account list, so many different options. Or on Facebook, if it's an interest-based audience or even a lookalike audience that you're testing, whatever the combination might be. If it's on Google ads, that audience, instead of it being an actual audience, it would be a keyword. The keyword that you're getting in front of is driving good search terms, they're driving good engagement, good leads, etc. If we're not getting in front of the right person, everything else is pretty much useless. So for example, if we're trying to get in front of VPs of marketing, but marketing students are the ones interacting with our ads, they are not the decision maker. They're never going to be able to convert into revenue, let alone opportunities. Now, depending on the ad channel, I mentioned this, the available audience will change. For example, to get more into detail here, Facebook, we have job titles, we have industries, interests, contact list, lookalikes. Fun fact, minimum size audience required by Facebook is 1,000. So that's very important to keep in mind. But these are different examples of audiences that we can create on Facebook. For LinkedIn, we have job titles, account lists, functions, company size, seniority, member skills, member groups, and a lot more awesome, different combinations. LinkedIn is definitely a more B2B centric platform, right? People keep their profile information a lot up to date. They're looking for jobs, etc. So it's definitely going to be more B2B inclined. Google, that could be keywords, it could be contact lists, it can be, industries if you're layering in, Google's native audiences, it could be company size, it could be custom intent audiences, it could be in-market audiences. You can see all of the options here. It's incredible, like how much experimentation we can actually do. It can almost be overwhelming at times. So this is just to help you think through all the different audiences available. There are so many. Now, very, very important. As important as who you are going to target is who you are going to exclude. So just, yes, we want to get in front of the right person, but we also want to make sure we're not getting in front of the wrong person. So we want to make sure we're excluding things such as customers, people that downloaded our content. If you're promoting an ebook or a white paper, exclude the people that just did what you wanted them to do, right? Like, don't allow yourself to, spend money on people that already completed the action you wanted them to take. Employees, we love our employees. You guys are awesome, but I don't want to spend my ads on you. Competitors, right? Exclude those. Partners, any poor fit job functions. If you don't want to get in front of people in sales or marketing, exclude that, or even job titles. So all of these things to keep in mind, so that way you can exclude the people that you don't want your ads to be getting in front of. Now, why focus on ads second? You might come across a great audience. It's driving the best quality possible, but unfortunately, let's say, your goal cost per lead was $100, but you're getting leads for $500 on that audience. So this is where we really want to focus in on that second piece, the ads. Your ads are so important, right? Like, you're getting in front of the right person, but they actually, interact with your ad. And if your ad looks horrible, or it's not compelling, or it's not speaking to their pain points, then they're not going to engage and they're not going to take the action that you want. So in order to find that combination between the audience and the ad, whether when you're testing the ad, think through the creative, the messaging, the type. Once you find that combination that works and allows you to generate the cost per lead you want, then you can move forward. So a lot of ad testing has to take place. And unfortunately, not enough B2B companies pay enough attention to dissecting their ads and really testing their ads as well as they could be. Now, I really want to drive this point home of the importance of ads and ask you all watching this presentation today, how many times have you seen an ad today on LinkedIn that you did not interact with? I'm sure most of you here can say there was a lot of ads that you did not click on, you did not interact with. Your prospect is no different. They are no different than you. They're seeing a lot of ads, but the only difference is it's your ad that they're not interacting with. So really, really think through your ads and the importance of your ads, as they can be critically a competitive advantage compared to your competitors that are just, kind of skipping this box and just getting creative made last minute. So in terms of creative, ad testing and really thinking through this, for creative, think color, style, font, placement. For copy, think short form copy, long form copy, direct copy where you're calling out your ICP, or indirect copy, the type, whether it's carousel, video, image, text, conversation, if it's on search, dynamic, responsive, expanded, all these different elements. So think through all of this when thinking for ideas for ad testing. And a pro tip for everyone here is to build a swipe file. Start to take screenshots and build this file of inspiration of ads that you come across out in the ecosystem of the Facebook newsfeed, the LinkedIn newsfeed, or just on Google, wherever you're hanging out, and document these different variations of ads, regardless if they're like directly your competitor. A lot of the times you're going to find inspiration in other industries, and take note of that. So when you go to create ads, you have something, you have this file of inspiration to be able to start, not from scratch. Now, why focus on assets last? Really important. We focus on assets last because, sometimes the best lift is not going to come from another ad type. It's really going to come from just offering something more compelling. If after testing multiple variations of ads and you're still not getting the results you'd like, right? Let's say you have that audience you verified, you've been going through the ringer in terms of testing different ads, but you're just still not getting those unit economics that work for you. It could just simply be your target audience does not want what you're giving them. At the end of the day, if their offer is not resonating with that audience, then you got to think through, what is something else that I can offer this audience that maybe will resonate better and be able to drive those economics that, make sense for me and deem successful experimentation. Let's talk about setup. How do we set up our experiments? Now, here's some best practices to keep in mind. 3 key best practices to keep in mind here. Number one is to leverage a naming convention. So simple, naming convention, naming campaigns. Why does that matter? It matters, especially if any of you've been in an agency before, this matters because you're sharing your account with other people. But we want to leverage a naming convention because this is going to allow us to isolate our different campaigns easier so that we understand what it is we're testing. So for example here, a simple convention you can follow is location, audience, objective, or ad type. So for example, we have NA, which is the location, seniority skills, which is the audience, the objective is lead generation, and the ad type is image. And as you can see here, the only thing I changed was the type as we're testing the type in this variation. So we have variation 1 with image, variation 2 with conversation ads, and then variation 3 with video. This, of course, is an example for LinkedIn ads, but same thing applies. If it's Google, it could be, expanded versus responsive. It could be at the campaign level. It could be at the ad group level. Really, it doesn't matter. It's just whatever makes sense for you. And ideally, the best way is to isolate the variables and be able to give it enough, daily budget across it. So that way you can actually experiment. That's usually done at the campaign level. Number 2 is to rotate ads evenly. You want to allow each ad to receive equal distribution for testing. Unfortunately, with like Facebook specifically, is like you can have one ad set and then 3 ads underneath that ad set. And then Facebook is going to distribute the spend based on what they deem is your top performer. Sometimes it works, and then sometimes it just doesn't work because it's not giving that variable enough visibility. So in those instances, you might have to break it out to another ad set and isolate that variable so it gets all of that budget. In LinkedIn ads, when you go in your ad section, you click on the little gear icon, you can actually make sure that your ads are rotating evenly to make sure you're getting that equal distribution. The key thing is you just want to make sure that, you're going through the effort of isolating these variables. You want to make sure that they're all getting a fair shot of determining whether or not they have the chance to perform. And then number 3 is to really avoid any form of expansion, unless that is an intentional action of a variable that you're trying to test, right? So for LinkedIn, they call it audience expansion. For Facebook, they call it detailed targeting expansion. And for Google, it's called targeting expansion. So essentially, this is like, I went through the effort to find this amazing audience, and LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, I want you to go basically ignore this and find other people that you think are relevant. Sounds beautiful, but doesn't usually work out. So unless it's intentional, just recommend that you just leave that box unchecked. Now, the key thing to keep in mind here is you want to isolate your variables and you want them to serve evenly, right? We're going through a lot of effort here with our experimentation setup. We want to make sure, again, that these variables, the ads, the audiences, the assets, they get a fair shot. Now, let's talk about safeguards. Safeguards you can place on your experimentation to make sure things don't go insane. Now, you want to eliminate overspending with automation rules. Automation rules should become your best friend. A lot of people don't like automation rules because it can cause chaos if not set up properly. But if you set them up right, they will save you so much time and energy and really help you with your experimentation. So there's really 2 key automation rules that I want you to think about when you go to set up your campaigns in whatever platform. So Google actually has automation rules that they allow you to do natively, and Facebook has automation rules that they allow you to do natively. LinkedIn, on the other hand, unfortunately, they do not have automation rules natively on the platform, and you'd have to use some sort of third party to be able to create that automation setup. Now, the 2 rules that you really want to use is number 1, a non-performer rule, and number 2 is like an ongoing maintenance rule. So number 1, the first rule you want to set up is pause ad if the specified spend did not generate the first lead. So for example, if we want to generate leads for $100 and this ad has spent, let's say $200 without generating a lead, turn it off. And the range that I recommend that you put to really give the ad a fair shot, right, in terms of performance, is 2 to 3x your target cost per lead. So again, if you want leads for $100, let it go to $200, $300 max before cutting it off and determining that it does not have what it takes to perform. Now, sometimes experiments do well initially, but then they start to fatigue and they start to, no longer perform as well as they once did. So the second rule is really going to protect you in that regard, and it's your ongoing maintenance rule. So this is going to pause your ads if your cost per lead is higher than a specified amount. So this is completely up to you. I usually recommend 1.5 to 2x your target cost per lead. So if your goal is $100 per lead, pause at 150 to 200. So just to give you a visual representation here, I'm a visual person. This is what the first rule looks like, that non-performer rule. Pause any ad if the specified spend did not generate that first lead. So assume, this is the spend threshold, and these three little dots here didn't make it. They got shut off. And these other ones, they did generate a lead within our spend threshold, so they're able to progress. For the ongoing maintenance rule, this is what it would look like. Assume, our CPL threshold is $60, and each one of these red dots here indicate, ads that went over the $60 threshold. So we're going to go ahead and shut those off now. So this just allows you to eliminate that overspending and really make sure that, you have safeguards in place so that way you can experiment confidently. Here's an example of what setting up this non-performer rule would look like in Facebook. So you would essentially create a rule based on pause ads. You would apply the rule to the one ad, for example, or however many ads you have in that ad set. Again, you have to really make sure you're serving your variables evenly. That usually means breaking it out into their own ad sets. The action you want to take here is to turn off the ad, and you can see if we spent more than $200 and we have less than one result, in this case it would be a lead, turn it off. In Google, this is what the ad would look like. You can call it, the action would be based on pause ads within your account. If, cost is greater than $200, conversion is less than 1, turn it off. So you can see it's really the same thing. The same thing goes in, other platforms as well that support automation rules. Last but not least, let's talk about scale. How can we take things to the next level? We've been going through the 3 A's testing philosophy. We've identified our audiences, our ads, and our assets that seem to be working. How can we take it to the next level? Now, when you break scaling down to its first principles, it really comes down to 2 key things. And that's number 1, visibility, and number 2, finding new opportunities. So when I think of scaling, I always think about the 80-20 rule, which essentially dictates that 80% of your outputs come from 20% of your inputs. So in terms of like advertising, 20% of your campaigns generate 80% of your results. So it's all about like identifying what is that 20%, and then how can we do more of that? How can we scale that up? How can we put more budget behind it to drive more growth? Now, visibility into the key metrics that determine success for you. So that could be lead to MQL or lead to SQO, or the average deal size per opportunity, or the pipe to spend. How efficient is that channel? For every dollar you put in, how much pipeline are you getting back? Or it could even be your SQO to close one. All of these different metrics will give you that visibility in terms of, should I put more money behind this and scale it further? Now, it would be beautiful if you could just put an infinite amount of money behind a campaign that's doing well for you, but unfortunately, eventually, you're gonna hit a scaling wall. Depending on your audience size, there's only a certain amount of money that you can spend against it. So for example, if you have an audience with a list size of 50,000, then you're going to be able to spend a lot more than if you had an audience size of 10,000. Same thing if you had a keyword with 100 searches a month, you're going to spend a lot less than if you had a keyword with 1,000 searches a month. So that's very important to keep in mind. And then last but not least, since you're going to hit this scaling wall, you always need to be on the lookout for finding new opportunities of scale, new ideas for experimentation. So whether that's different ad types, like don't say you have scaled, LinkedIn ads if all you've ever ran is single image. You still have carousel, you still have video, you still have text ads. There's so much more room left on the table for you. Also, it could be the actual objective of the campaign itself. If all of your campaigns are running based on conversions, what if you tried website visits? What if you tried engagement? So much more room for growth and potential scale. It could also be channels. If all you've ever done is run ads on LinkedIn, what if you tried Facebook? Or what if you tried, YouTube or Quora? A lot of different channels out there for you to get in front of your ICP. Could even be audiences. If all you've ever done is firmographic audiences, what if you tried intent audiences or technographic audiences? A lot of different audience types that you can leverage. And then last but not least is offers. If you've been offering the same thing for the last 3 months, what happens if you switched it up and you tried a new offer? Could that help you scale things further and resonate better with your audience? Hope this presentation was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn. Really looking forward to connecting with everyone here. And thanks so much for watching.